hasn't invented a time machine yet, that even when you do make mistakes, sometimes it's irreparable and you can't go back in time and correct it. And so it could totally disrupt your career. So I'll go through that. And then the system, what I did was the modules had been scattered over like a 5-7 years when I developed them, until a friend of mine, Valerie Concello, who's one of the top commercial real estate agents on the peninsula in San Mateo County, she and I worked together for like 4 years. And where I met her was through Commercial Real Estate Women, which is one of the top real estate women organization in the country and in the Bay Area. I was asked to come join the board of directors of Commercial Real Estate Women. The only man ever asked to come sit on the board of directors of an all-women's professional organization. When I got the call from my friend who wanted me to come sit on the board, one, I was kind of surprised, and two, I was totally scared, to be honest. For a man to sit on an all-women's, high-powered board of directors organization, I had no idea what that entailed or what it would be like. So I talked to my wife about it, and I thought about it for a little bit, and I figured if I'm ever scared of anything, I'm going to do it. Because I figure it's probably the right thing to do. I'm not going to be scared of doing anything. So I joined the board, and they made me the managing director of programs and education. Within the first 6 months of taking control, I restructured the Educations and Program Committee and basically recruited at least 6 deep of highly qualified women in the organizations to basically run that division and that vertical within the organization. So I was pretty much done with the backing of the board to be able to restructure that division and make it more strategic and tactical as opposed to project-based, which is the way it was being run before. There was a lot of politics involved too, because obviously no woman wants some guy to tell them what to do. So I had to, it was really difficult for me politically and psychologically to be able to do the restructuring, but we were able to do it and it became extremely successful. So since I had some time, in my tenure, I decided I would launch a scholarship program with Crew, partnered with USC Lusk Center in their master's program in commercial real estate development that had been brought here to the Bay Area, and I raised $15,000 and basically sent 5 people through the program, through the scholarship program. And then I ended up working with different sections of the organization over time, adding value until Valerie came to me and said, I'm now the president-elect, I'm going to be president, would you coach me? And I had never coached anybody of her stature or at her level. So I told her I would need at least a couple weeks to get my thoughts together and pull things together. So over the 2 weeks, I basically pulled this lecture together and then presented it to her, and realized that the presentation was so powerful that I would give it to each and every one of my students on an individual basis in the 3 courses that I was teaching. So I did it basically 90 times at 2 hours each. I wrote the notes down as I was giving the lectures to all of my students and handed them over to them as their strategic business plan to move forward more decisively in their academic and professional careers going forward. So that's basically the motivation, of the presentation, and I've been giving it at the end of every class here at St. Mary's for the last 5 years, in other universities and colleges in the Bay Area. So let's go over quickly, what we learned during the semester. Well, let's first talk about the pre-test. The pre-test was basically a high-level, key aspects pulled from the book and the curriculum and put into a pre-test. And if you noticed, a lot of the stuff that was in the pre-test was actually in the book, but the pre-test also delved into model building and other depth of the content and depth of the knowledge that you would need to move forward to set a solid foundation in corporate finance. Your quiz was, again, written by me as an extensive case study to basically fill in the gaps, to broaden and deepen the content that's not really being brought up in the book, or is not really presented well, I think, in the book. You learned about yield curves and yield curve dynamics and movements in interest rates and the influence of the Federal Reserve on dictating interest rates. Now, movements in interest rates are going to move asset prices and intrinsic valuations of both stocks, bonds, real estate, derivatives. You learn multiple valuation techniques, not only technical analysis, but fundamental intrinsic valuation techniques such as perpetuity, which assumes the cash flow remains flat forever, Gordon growth, which assumes that the cash flows grow at a constant rate forever, the multiple approach, using the peer groups as a guide, and also the discounted cash flow methodology where you discount the cash flows back over the holding period plus the terminal value to come up with the present value. If you take the present value and you subtract out the cost, now you're into capital budgeting, and if you get a net present value that's positive, you're going to accept the project. You get a net present value that's positive, you have an internal rate of return that's higher than the weighted average cost of capital. In the quiz, we went through and looked at the current markets. We were tracking the markets on an ongoing basis so that you could start to get the feel for what the major asset classes are, the major asset classes that you are going to accumulate your wealth in over the next 30 to 40 years. So you might as well know about stocks, bonds, real estate, and the other asset classes because you're going to be exposed to it if you're not already. I'm sure your parents and your grandparents have accumulated a lot of money in those asset classes, and if you're going to get any of that money, one, you better know about them, and two, you better make sure that you're going to get the money because they always say they're going to give it to you, and a lot of times they don't. What you also learned is the modern and postmodern portfolio theory. You had the expected return of the portfolio, you had the portfolio standard deviation, the capital allocation line, the efficient frontier, the utility curves, and where all they come together in tangency becomes the market basket. You learned about adding alternative assets to the stock bond portfolio, and since their returns have low, no, and negative correlation with stocks and bonds, it bows out the efficient frontier. Reduces the expected return on the portfolio, but reduces the risk of the portfolio even more, and increases the risk-adjusted rate of return. And if you can provide your clients with an 8 to 10% rate of return on their portfolio every year, you'll be able to double their money in less than 10 years. We learned about intrinsic valuations, and then you did all kinds of monotonous, busy work in basically learning the mathematics behind the finance, using the solutions and the problems to basically see how to solve these finance problems in both the homeworks and in the extra credit problem sets. I worked with you on your resumes, I worked with you on how to write, trading briefs, business quality, communications. You got to know how to do the memos, you got to know how to do the decks, you got to know how to apply the theory in application and be able to do that over and over again. And that's what we culminated in at the end of the semester, was really doing an application, intrinsic valuation, and working so hard with you to get those decks perfect so that you could use them as part of your portfolio of work product that you could show potential employers for internships and jobs. Okay? And that's really my goal. The academics is great. I find the academy a very interesting place to be, but for me it's all about training you to get you to the point where you can get a job and be self-sustainable and take care of yourself over time. I don't care about multiple choice exams. I just care about application and training. So why don't we go ahead and start with the exit lecture. So I'm going to start over here with this model, and then we're going to go around. So again, you're going to need to make sure that you stay focused on this stuff. And then could somebody, who wants to be my camera person? You got it, Bill? Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. All right, so let's start over here. This is called the nomenclature of knowledge. The nomenclature of knowledge is basically a multi-institutional model. I mean, you can't go to school, you can't learn one discipline and understand how the world works. It's a multi-institutional model, it's a social science model. You gotta learn a little bit about everything, but I think the social science models, and if you put the models together into a system, you can understand how the world works. And if you understand how the world works, you can forecast the direction of the value of equity. Now, Is it important, or do you think it would be valuable to be able to forecast the value of your stock portfolio? Do you think it'd be important to be able to forecast the value of the equity in your real estate portfolio?
Yes.
Do you think it'd be important to be able to forecast the value of your own human equity
Yes.
going forward? And to be able to understand if something happens, if it's not going to benefit you, you're going to have to get out of the way or have contingency plans in place to mitigate the damage or the negative externalities that are going to be imposed on you. Or if you can see the path of these policies or these externalities that are going to be positively affecting you, you want to get in the way of those positive externalities and those policy outcomes to leverage your human equity to take advantage of them. Because at the end of the day, it's not just you, it's you got family and friends and other people, and then you're going to have your own employees someday that you're going to have to take care of. So the model is basically a multi-institutional model. It's a multiple regression model. You have to solve it simultaneously. In the social sciences, each one of these equations in these institutions of knowledge have at least 50 variables in it. So there's 10 equations and 50 variables. That's 10 times 50 factorial. The human brain is the only machine that can actually solve that equation simultaneously. Now, with the advance of quantum computing and cloud computing and massive storage and data processing, you can actually get close to solving this equation, but the human brain is the only machine that can solve this simultaneously, instantaneously, and contiguous over time, because your brain can transact 1 trillion transactions a day because it's biological. No other machine has ever been designed that's as powerful as our own human brain, with infinite storage and infinite processing capabilities to create information, to be able to pull and to make decisive decisions and know the decisions that you're making are correct so you can move forward, more effectively. You got to understand the accounting, both the financial and the managerial accounting. That rolls up into the finance, the financial reporting, the cycle, the budget analysis, the variance. Those all roll up into financial ratios and statements that then you go to the capital markets to raise your equity, your debt, maybe your private equity, your private debt, go to the bank, go to the seed, go to others to basically raise the capital that you need to be able to grow your company. So you have to understand the finance too. The finance also rolls up and overlaps into the economics. You have to understand macro and micro theory. You got to understand monetary policy and fiscal policy. You got to understand what's going to happen to you if they decide to raise personal income taxes on you, and you're going to be looking at lower disposable income because they raised the taxes on you. Or maybe you have more disposable income and they lowered the taxes. Or if they increase interest rates, the value of probably the majority of your assets are going to go down. If they lower interest rates, the value are going to go up. So you have to understand not only the economics, the monetary and fiscal policy, but you have to understand the economic regime in which you operate. We're in a democratic capitalistic society. It's very different than Latin America or Africa or the Middle East, or other countries. They have different types of cultures and different types of democratic, capitalistic styles to how they govern and how they manage their economies. So you have to understand that. And I think what's the most important, and you have to understand the political science and how policy is actually formulated and where it comes from. Does it come from the legislature? Does it come from the executive branch? Does it come up from the people, like in Hong Kong? And how are these policies formulated? How are they reconciled, negotiated? And then how are they actually signed off and passed as law in the system that's administered through the bureaucracy, through the public administration, that will have positive and negative outcomes on you, both intended and unintended. Do you understand that? Our system, our both political and economic system, is based on Western philosophy. We're not Shinto, Taoism, Confucianism. We're not Middle Eastern, influenced. Ours is a Western civilization based on Western European philosophers, such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Stuart Mills and Adam Smith and others, and our founding fathers basically set the governing structures, the legal structures, and the economic structures that we live in today that we totally take for granted. I don't think even most people even understand where we've come from. And if you look at the philosophical systems and the systems in which we exist, We're just derivatives of theocracies and theological systems that were designed 5,000, 10,000 years ago. We've just changed and modified them, but the governing structures and the power structures are basically still in place, and if you look at them and compare them, they all pretty much look the same, just different types of nuances. What makes this equation actually work as an operating system, for your brain, is the psychology in which we live in. If you look around you, we're all pretty much normal. We got our psychoses, right? We don't live in pathological societies or societies in which the cultures and psychologies have completely been destroyed. Baghdad, Idlib, other places in the Middle East that have been completely destroyed. They're not going to university there in a lot of cases. How can you study when you're in Mosul, when your city has been completely annihilated? You're not going to college. We are. And in a Western civilized society of this level of standard of living, we can learn, and we could reach intellectual capabilities that a lot of people cannot. And within the sociological systems in which we operate, it actually creates the system to be able to calculate this and solve it. And again, you can solve it because you have the mental capabilities to do it. What actually makes this work too is we have a standardization in linguistics and language. English is the standard language across the globe. Okay, so we can communicate pretty much with anybody at a business level. We also have similar cultures and communication and telecommunications capabilities now. Now with the onslaught of the cell phone, these are basically supercomputers. These things basically can hold what used to take rooms and rooms and rooms of processors and tubes and stuff. Now you have in your hand. Because of the capabilities of this utility and the attributes of this product, you are now the most powerful generation on Earth. The question then will become for you in your future is, will you use this power for good or for evil? And you will be able to, you will have to make those decisions. What else is really important is the architecture. If you go to any advanced country in the world, any, Singapore, Tokyo, Seoul, you go to London, Frankfurt, New York, Boston, LA, Sao Paulo, anywhere in the world, they're all within central business districts, and the reflection of their culture and the advancement of their culture is reflected in their architecture. And if you look around you, and you can't see it now, but this is actually an extremely beautiful place. It's been architecturally laid out. You go to San Francisco, it's absolutely gorgeous, along with Chicago. Those are basically incubations of commerce and intellectualism that doesn't happen anyplace else other than the advanced world. So we are in an amazing place, and this system, I believe, articulates your actual true capabilities going forward if you recognize it. And I hopefully you recognize it now. This is a machine learning language. It basically shows you how the world works on a social science basis. It's a complex system of institutions and equations. There's variables in one equation that are also in the other, so it's very dynamic. We can now program this and emulate this, but for decades we couldn't. It was only the human brain that could actually solve this simultaneously in a multi-institutional fashion. It's multiple regression, it's big data, it's biological processing with infinite storage and infinite processing capabilities. That is you. The next model is, one, you're going to be talking to a lot of people, correct?
Yes.
In your career, you're probably talking to a lot of people. Do you even know where these people come from? When you're talking to someone, the first thing I would probably want to know is, where do they come from? Where did they grow up? Where did they go to school? Who are their friends? Everything, I want to know their background. And then I want to know where they are in the organization. I want to know what company they work for, what position they are at in the organization, so that I can basically tailor my communication specifically for that individual. I'm not talking finance to a marketing person. I'm talking marketing to a marketing person. I'm talking finance to a finance, accounting to accounting, ops to ops, sales to sales, or I'm talking multiple linguistics across multiple functions of the organization for people who are very high up in the organization. So the question for you is, where are you going to be? Where are you going to start? Where do you want to go? Who are you talking to within the organization? And then, if you get into the organization, you have to start plotting. Hopefully you could work at the virtual level of the organization and work cross-functionally in cross-functional teams on programs and projects to add value at the virtual level. Or as you move up, if you have aspirations to move up in the organization across functions, you're going to have to become more mechanistic and understand the mechanics of the policy and the bureaucracies and how these institutions and corporations are actually governed. And then plot your path to get you to where you want to go. And you may find out, based on glass ceilings, that you're not going to be able to get upward mobility within your organization based on some kind of racial, gender, or some other type of bias. So once you realize that, you have to either get out or you have to navigate over to other areas of the organization to then work your way up. And as you work your way up, you've got to be able to communicate with senior level executives, the board of directors, other stakeholders, stockholders, and other individuals and groups within the organization. So it's extremely important to know who you're talking to. And these org structures are going to be designed and crafted specifically for the industries and the companies within their marketplace. So just quickly, a major takeaway from that is you have to scan the organizational structure before you go into a corporation to be able to identify their advantages and comparative disadvantages. You have to understand the organizational structure based on industry and corporate culture and market. And then you have to determine your location within the organization and to be able to constantly articulate the value that you bring that position within that division, within that organization, to maximize your human value and to arbitrage the human capital that you've built and accumulated within the organization so you can leverage it. If they don't give it to you, you have to leave. You have to move, okay? Because if you get stuck in a myopic situation or a destructive situation within an organization, you're destroying your human capital and your human equity. You're wasting time. You're even doing more than wasting time. You're destroying your optimal capabilities to be able to move in your career. You need to understand how to navigate and how to arbitrage your human capital. How do you build and accumulate capital but then leverage it and move on or up? Be willing to move and execute. If you're in a bad situation, move. If you want to do something else and you see an opportunity, that an opportunity is brought to you, and you trust the individual and you really think it's an opportunity, do it. Don't waste your time. You got to be able to communicate both vertically and horizontally within the organization. You got to be multilinguistical, and you got to be ready to go. And if it's time to go, go. Don't wait. You're wasting your time. The third model is you have to have a strategic, academic, and professional plan. Okay? You got to have a plan. You got to have a 10, 20, 30, 40-year plan. Time goes by really quick. And the saddest thing that I hear, time and time again is, God, I really wish I would have done that. I don't have time to do it. I have other commitments now. I really wish I would have done that. Well, if you would have had a plan in place, that would have been a priority, and you would have focused on it, and you would have achieved it. And it doesn't even matter if you achieve what your goal is immediately. It's that you achieved what you set out to. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20 or 30 or even 40 years. That all that matters is that you got what you wanted because you worked for it and you were focused on the prize. So here's your strategic plan. To be able to move forward in your career over the next 4 decades, because it will come very quickly, is you're going to have to basically identify what your priorities are. What are you willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice? Who you're willing to hurt and who you're not willing to hurt. Because you're going to have to make priorities, and that takes all time, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. And you have to decide what you're going to sacrifice and what you're not going to sacrifice. Is your priority your family, your friends, sports, music, your job, school, other things? I mean, because those are all going to take time, and time is the resource. So what are you willing to sacrifice, and what are you not willing to sacrifice? So once you've identified that, you start to move forward. Well, this little line right here is your bachelor's degree. Now, your bachelor's degree isn't the end all, okay? It's just the ticket to get into the baseball game, okay? And the goal is to get down on the field and become a professional, okay? But the first thing you need is to get a bachelor's degree, and sometime it'll take 4 years. I have friends of mine and myself, it takes 7 to 10 years to get our bachelor's degree because we were working and doing other stuff. So once you get the degree, you get into this BARDO state, or this post-grad state, which is extremely important because you need to be focused on your career during the state. Now, the accountants, you have to work, you have to spend your first 2 years to get the experience and pass the CPA, and then you need the experience. Finance people need the CFA designation. That takes 3 years to get. Other people, if you're going to be in IT, you got to get your project management certification, maybe a certification in Oracle, Salesforce, other types of systems, certifications. If you're going to be in finance, you're going to need licensing. You need the Series 7 and the 66 to sell the securities and to be able to manage and advise your clients. You're going to need to, excuse me, just try to focus, it's really disruptive when you're doing that. Where was I? I got totally sidetracked. You're going to need the, if you're going to sell real estate in the state of California, you need a real estate license. If you're going to sell insurance, you need an insurance license. If you're going to practice law in the state of California, you got to pass the bar. If you're going to be a CPA, you got to pass the license. So some of you are going to have to be pursuing this stuff within this BARDO state, this 5 to 7 year period after you graduate. And they're going to be looking at you. If you've done this, if you want the gold ring, which is the Ivy League education, the MBA from the Ivy League. And it's not even a matter of affording to go to the Ivy League, it's do you want it, and can you get in, okay? Because if you can get in, the money's nothing, because you've already saved the money here. Maybe you can get your employers to back you, maybe you can get your parents to throw some money in, and then you fund it. Because once you get into Wharton or Columbia or NYU or Stanford or Cal or any of those schools, you're never going to be unemployed ever again because the alumni network is so strong that they will not allow you to fail. And they will make sure that they're right along with you, providing you the opportunities you need for your degree. So it's not the money, it's getting in. And you got to get in the upper 90th percentile on your GMAT score. You got to have 3 letters of recommendation. You got to write a statement of purpose. Then you got to be thinking about that stuff 2 years in advance, even before you go. And you actually should have been thinking about it in your freshman year, before you got into college. So you got the GPA and everything. So you could go for the gold ring. And then once you do your summer internship, they've already offered you a job and you've negotiated them taking out your loans and taking out the last year of your MBA. So it didn't even cost you, really. Because that's all you had to do was get in. Once you graduate, you're in this apprentice or this associate program, which would last 3 to 5 years, working underneath an executive vice president or a managing director. Now these people up here are highly motivated. They want to get into the C-suite. And they're willing to do whatever it takes and sacrifice whatever it takes to get into the C-suite, which is awesome. Because if you're here underneath the VP or the MD, and they want to go up here, they go up, and you take their position. Get it? So strategically being in a place underneath some managing directors and vice presidents is extremely important. Now, this is all important because you got 4 to 7 years of your bachelor's, 3 to 7 years in this BARDO state, 2 years for the MBA, 3 to 5 years here, 10 years and 10 to 20 years up here. That's 40 years. Done. Right? You're 20, 40, 60, retired. All right? And if you make an average of $100,000 a year for 40 years, that means you generated gross in income $4 million. So basically you, sitting in the chair right now, are worth $4 million. And I've never heard any student ever tell me that they were worth $4 million. But you are. You're worth $4 million. If you generate $100,000 a year, your gross income will generate $4 million. So you're worth $4 million. Now this is where my problem comes in. You're all worth $4 million, and you have no life insurance. Okay? Which means that if something happens to you, your parents and your family and everybody gets nothing. They are relying upon you to go out and be successful, because at some point in time they're going to be 80, 90 years old, and they're going to be looking to you to take care of them. And if you don't have the means to do that, or if you're not around because you got sick, diabetes, got amputated, maybe you got Crohn's disease, maybe you got cancer, maybe you got hit in a car accident, maybe you were murdered. That stuff happens. It's happened to my family, it's happened to my friends, and if they had life insurance, their family would have been well off or better off to be able to backstop the destruction and the damage associated with losing you. And it's cheap. $1 million a year, $1 million of life insurance for 30 years, level premium, $500 a year for you. $500, $1 million, 30 years. You'll be 50 by the time the policy goes out. And as the inflation eats away at the premium and your income increases, it basically becomes free. And you want to get $2 million, that's $1,000 a year for 30 years. $500 a year, $1 million, that's beer money. That's your beer money for a month. Beer money or life insurance. It's really up to you. But I hear it all the time. I'm young, I don't have any family, I don't need life insurance. Mortality's going to come. But I've always been the one, to believe when I was 22 years old, I got $1 million worth of life insurance to make sure that my family was taken care of just in case anything happens. So my recommendation to you is get the life insurance. Okay? Maybe not for yourself, but do it for your family. So 20 to 30 years goes really fast. Okay? You need to plan and stay on track. Don't worry about the money to go to the good schools. Shoot for the best school and the best program. And the most important thing is, don't let anybody get in your way. There's always going to be somebody there saying, well, I would never do that, or why are you doing that, or you shouldn't do that. There's always going to be somebody in your way, or asking you what you're doing, and a lot of people don't even care what you're doing. They really don't. You got to find family and friends that are going to support you unconditionally. And then tell the people who are not going to support you unconditionally, tell them what they want to hear. I was told that all the time. It's like, why are you getting 2 undergraduate degrees and 5 masters and a doctorate, working full time and teaching at all these schools? It's like, I would never do that. Why are you doing that? You must love school. Yes, I love school. I love it. I love it. I freaking love school. Now, I don't love school. I wanted to be a financial engineer and a financial economist when I was 22 years old. What does it take to be a financial economist and econometrician? You got to have 5 master's degree. You got to have a doctorate degree. You got to be able to communicate with different people and handle the data and the mathematics and the finance and understand all that stuff. It took me 15 years to do that. My friends didn't care. They wanted to drink beer. I wanted to be a financial engineer. And they couldn't even understand. They didn't know what it was. So I told them, yes, I like school. And then they stopped bothering me. The next model is the psychological model. And this is probably one of the more important models next to that model. Because we as human beings model other individuals' behavior, both the good and the bad behavior. There's a professor at Stanford University called Albert Bandura. You should read his books on modeling and self-efficacy. It's mind-blowing. Because we unconsciously model other people's behaviors, both positive and negative. And he did an experiment where he took kids and broke them up into 2 groups, a control group and an experimental group. And in the control group, the kids were playing, watching TV, watching a clown, blah, 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 doing all kinds of funny stuff, laughing, everything. The experimental group, the kids were watching TV, they were watching a clown get basically beat up, by a bunch of people with sticks and stuff like that. When they let the kids loose into a room with a clown for the control group, the kids ran to the clown, they were playing, laughing, they were having a good time. The kids in the experimental group, when they were released into the room with the clown, they started beating up on the clown. We model other people's behaviors. Okay? So the key is to understand that, and then to basically find models, our own models, a portfolio of models, that have basically attributes that we want to emulate, and to be able to put together a target or an ideal person that we want to work towards. We are here. This is where our actual self is. I don't want to be a student or a professor. I want to run a multinational corporation or do something big. How do I get there? Well, I'm stuck here. I want to be there. I've watched other people do it. I'm going to emulate. I'm going to put together my ideal and target self, and I'm going to start working towards becoming that person. This gap between your actual self and your ideal self is the cognitive dissonance. But you need to narrow that gap. How do you do it? Through the process of self-efficacy. Through the process of self-efficacy. What is self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is the process of trying to do something you want to do. And when you fail, you don't look at it as a genetic predisposition. You just look at it as a lack of information. And if you couple your persistence and your capabilities to overcome that information deficiency, you will achieve what you want to do, and you will close this gap. So it's self-efficacy. You can only narrow the gap through the process of self-efficacy. There are two types of individuals. I hear it all the time when I talk to students. And these are the extremes. Oh, Professor Sousa, I'm a science and a math person. I really like the quant stuff. I really don't like to deal with people very much. I really would like an analyst position. I'm really good at math and science because my parents were mathematically inclined. I have a genetic predisposition for math. I'm really good at it. I've seen people be really successful in it. I want to go down that path. I don't want to do the people stuff. I don't want to sell. I don't want to manage. And then I have other peoples that are sales and managers type people. Oh, I'm a people person. I can sell anything to anybody. I don't like math and science. I mean, I was told I wasn't good at math and science when I was a kid, so therefore I must not be good at math and science. And my parents, you know, they were sales and managers. They did really well for themselves. I'm a people person. I have a genetic predisposition towards sales and management. I'm going to go down this path. I don't want to do any of this stuff. But the people who are really smart and really creative understand the deficiencies and where they were born into and the conditioned responses in which they were put into. And if they came into this realm with a comparative advantage, both cognitively and conditionally, they work on this to bring this up to be equal in their capabilities. Same thing with the math and science people. You talk to any engineer from Silicon Valley that designs either on the electrical, mechanical, or civil, or any of those areas, they say, why am I designing all of this product for these companies that are basically taking my intellectual property and profiting from it? What I want to do is I want to be my own entrepreneur. I want to develop my own product. I want to do my own startup company, and I want to raise the money, and I want to do my business. Oh shit! I got to go to do an MBA. So a lot of them go and do an MBA at Cal or Stanford or some other school. They basically learn all of this side, couple it together, and become an extremely powerful hybrid individual that's extremely capable in doing both. They're good at both. If you can do this and get to where you want, here's the prize. You can walk into a room at any point, and you will have the persona, the personality, and the presence to command the room. Coupled with your dress, your professional dress, or seriousness within, because that's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to size you up in 30 seconds or less on who you are and what you are by what you're wearing. And then how do you use your communication and your language to communicate with individuals, to be able to couple that with your charisma, to take on leadership, to then exert your referent and charismatic power over individuals, to be able to get them to do things that they otherwise would not do. And people aren't motivated necessarily by money. What they're motivated by is relationships and other individuals. It's the relationship that is really the value at the end of the day. And their ability to persuade and use their power is extremely amazing. If you look at these individuals, they can be in sports, they can be in corporate, they can be anywhere. You can spot them a mile away. And that's what you're going to be. You're going to be a model for a lot of people. You're already a model for a lot of people. People are watching you. And you are already a model for other individuals. And people are going to come up to you and say, take me with you. I want to work with you. I want to study with you. I want to go to school with you. I want to marry you. Whatever it is, they're going to want to be around you. And then it's up to you, this is your power, your individual power, is you will get to decide who you want to be with and who you want to take with you on your journey. And you're going to have to leave some people behind. And you'll be able to take some people, but you're not going to take some people. And that's extremely heartbreaking inside. But you will be able to move forward and take others with you. So the major takeaway from that, I think that was the major takeaway, wasn't it? Okay. The next model, to be able to do all this stuff, you have to have extremely effective time management skills. Larry, how did you get, how did you talk for 25 years? How do you, advise all these companies? How do you do all that work? How did you get the doctorate degree and 5 masters, 2 undergrads? How did you teach for 25? How did you do it? It was extremely organized. It basically laid out a strategic plan, a 5-year plan with basically my goals and objectives ranked from high to low for 5 years, and I updated them every year going out 5 years until I achieved the majority of what I wanted to get. Then I took the first 3 years and I broke them down into a tactical plan, and then broke up the years into 2 6-month period or 4 quarterly periods, and put in the metrics, my metrics in which I wanted to achieve quantitatively or qualitatively. But I wasn't stuck, right? I have to do this within this time period. If something came up, I pushed it down, I pushed it down. I didn't care necessarily that I got it by a certain time period, just as long as it's reasonable. But if I wanted something and it took me, 3, 5, 10, 15, 30 years to get it, the only thing that mattered is I got it. I got what I wanted. I achieved what I wanted at some point in time in my career. The operational plan. This is extremely important for you. How am I doing on time? Awesome. The operational plan. This is perfect because we're in December, so now we have January 2020. So basically you lay out all of the months for the year, and you start putting in basically hard deadline dates and milestone dates. I got to be studying for the bar. I got to be studying for the GMAT. I got to be studying for the LSAT. I got to be, applying for grad school. I got to be, my job interviews. I got to have my place to live and my house nailed down by this time. And then you start backing in and packing out days and times that people cannot take from you, that you need to focus on yourself to get what you need done during the time periods that you need done. And the most important plan is your weekly plan, going out at least 2 to 4 weeks in advance, trying to book and basically save and block out times that you know that you need to block out to get the stuff that you need to get done. But also have some extra time to be able to plug people in and things in that you feel are also necessary for you to be, a full human being. What's amazing is that time, the daily weekly schedule, is totally universal across all cultures. In almost all cultures, particularly ours, you have pretty much, you can do anything you want between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, if you're a morning person. Then from 8 to 9, you got to go get to your work. Then you get to work at 9, you work till 12. You have lunch from 12 to 1. You work from 1 to 5. You go to wherever you need to go from 5 to 6, and you got 6 to 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever it is that you need to get stuff done. Professor Sousa, I don't have enough time. Really? You have 5 to 8, 12 to 1, 6 to 11. There's plenty of time. It's priority. You're not organized. That's why you're running out of time, because you're reactive, not proactive in your time management skills. That's how I did it. Because I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't have this system of time management. The next model is you all, I hope, you will, I hope, if you follow my lead here, will be extremely wealthy individuals, barring your parents and your grandparents leaving you money. If you stick to the program, you will be able to accumulate wealth, you will be able to asset protect it, and you will be able to transfer it to people within your network or your family tax effectively and very efficiently. If you don't, your stuff's going to get stolen. Your wealth will be stolen. I can't tell you how many times as an investment advisor, broker, I've had people come to me and say, Larry, I need your help. Really, what happened? My sister stole our real estate. Well, how did she do that? Well, she went around me and she talked to my dad, who had somewhat dementia, and she basically had him sign over the apartment building over to me. Oh, and by the way, she also signed over, redid the will, the living trust, the irrevocable trust, got her name on the bank accounts, the brokerage accounts, everything, and I knew nothing about it until it was too late. I said, well, you need an attorney. I can't help you. If you would have come to me 5 years before when I first approached you and offered you my financial services, we probably would have avoided this, but you said, you know, you had a brother or an uncle that was a financial planner, and you went with him instead of me. Something like that. I hear that sound. So, there's basically 4 buckets, okay? You got your qualified side right here, which is pre-tax. That's your 401k, your SEP, defined benefit, your IRA. You know, the government is super cool. They basically say, okay, you can take a percentage of your income and put it into this qualified account, and you can accumulate your wealth over time, tax deferred, but when you turn 59 and a half, you can pull the money out, penalty free, but we're still going to tax you, and at 79 and a half, we're going to show up at your doorstep, and we're going to force you to take the money because we want our tax money. Okay? So they'll force you. So what you'll do is you'll make enough money, and once you reach a certain income level, you phase out of this, and you start dealing in the non-qualified, the after-tax realm. Okay? And you're going to have probably around 25% of your wealth going into this and into this qualified side, but it's only a certain time period, so you got to do it when you're young, because at some point it's too late. You can't go back and do it. And then actually, if you're going pro, you got to do the defined benefit because you can plow $250,000 a year into this thing. So it's like killer if you can do it. The non-qualified side, you're going to be putting money into real estate, businesses, stocks, bonds, appreciable assets. Okay, and at some point in time, you're going to target 50% of your income is going to be in this area. But the real estate and the stocks are probably going to spike at some point in time due to some kind of wealth effect, either through monetary policy or just through economics. And you're going to be over-concentrated in this area. So then what you do is you basically slice off, let's say it goes to 70 to 20%, you liquidate it, pay the frickin' taxes, and then stuff the money down here below the line in the non-qualified safe area, which is basically muni bonds, deferred annuities, guaranteed annuities, fixed annuities, life insurance. Basically, this wealth accumulation here will basically set up an annuity and wealth for you to live off for the rest of your life and not run out of money, and then take what's ever left over and give it to your heirs, you know, tax effectively. Is this interesting? So that's kind of the goal. If you stick to the program of wealth accumulation, I always like to do ESOP's fable. There's the hare, I'm going for the 20, 40, 100% with a lot of risk. Oops, I just lost $150,000. Or I take the $150 and I basically plod along and I start investing in these vehicles, in these tools to start accumulating wealth so that by the time you're 50, 60 years old, you got $4 million in these, you know, that you've accumulated. Because you were the tortoise won, right? The tortoise was doing 10% a year under the rule of 72 and doubled their money every 7.2 years. Every year for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And ended up with $4 million. So you have risk management, you have investment management strategies. The risk management is also investment management, but nobody really talks about it because everybody goes, well, I don't want any life insurance or insurance. I don't believe in that stuff. Oh, really? Well, who do you think invented the insurance products? It was the rich people on the East Coast that basically had the financial institutions design it and then had Congress write the tax code around it that would allow them to be able to accumulate and distribute the wealth effectively intergenerationally. That's why these families are super rich, because they understand this stuff and they use it. They believe in it. So the first thing was the convertible term insurance policy. $1 million, $500 a year, okay? But over time, I'm going to make a bunch of money, and my premium's going to go from $500 a year to $20,000 a year, and I'm going to have this whole life insurance of $1 million fully paid off in 20 years, so that the $1 million is going to go to my heirs, guaranteed. Guaranteed $1 million. And since I accumulated all that cash value, in the policy, I can borrow back on it, tax-free, and use it to fund my startup company, to buy my house, to fund my company, to buy my car, to send my kids to college, and then pay back the insurance policy. Amazing. And if I do pass away, and the death benefit goes to my heirs and I stay under the estate tax ceiling, the death benefit is paid out to my heirs tax-free. So how many times did I say tax-free?
A lot.
I did. Yeah. Well, Professor Simpson, I didn't understand it. I don't believe in life insurance. I don't need it. Really? Tell the rich people that. They totally get it. You can do variable universal life too, which is backed by basically securities that accumulates cash value based on the stock market. Other people get long-term care insurance, which is a great vehicle if you run it through your corporation with your wife or your spouse or somebody like that, because you got to be married, unfortunately. And when you pay the premium using pre-tax dollars from your corporation, you can pay the long-term care premiums. And then when you turn 80 years old and you can't do 2 daily functions a day, and you go into a convalescent facility, the premium kicks at $400 a day to basically backfill the cost associated with having to take care of you in the unit now, without having to dip into your savings and dip into your kids. Most people don't believe in this stuff. So what they'll do is by the time they turn 80, 90 years old, they'll go into a facility, they'll wipe out all of their savings and their wives' savings in the process, and then they'll start taking out their kids' savings too to keep them alive. Okay? So they wiped out everybody. They're going to get disability insurance on you. Oh, you gotta be underwritten, you gotta be healthy to get this stuff. If you don't have it, it's off the table, the strategy's dead. Okay? They're going to get disability insurance on you, a lot of it. So you as the senior executive, you get, something happens to you, you got disability, so you're going to need that income to basically keep going, but they're going to slap disability insurance on you. And they're going to slap life insurance on you. When you work your way up into the company, they're going to get life insurance company on you. Because if something happens to you, they're going to need the $5 million to basically hire the people to backstop and backfill you because you were such a huge impact on the company. Property casualty insurance, you're going to be either inheriting or you're going to be accumulating and investing in real estate. If you don't have property casualty insurance, you don't have fire insurance, you don't have earthquake insurance, a fire comes through, the earthquake comes through, destroys your building, gets red tagged, demolished. There's no income coming from the property to basically pay the mortgage. So therefore you're going to default on the mortgage and the bank's going to take the land, and you lost everything. Business umbrella insurance. If you become successful in your business or as a corporate executive, people are going to target you and try to sue you for liability. And business umbrella insurance is totally amazing. I've been protected multiple times. Basically what they do is they call the attorneys in New York, they fly out here, they basically go after the individuals that are trying to take you out, and they take them out in the process. It's freaking awesome.
Because you have them on retainer?
I can retain them or I can hire them.
Okay.
And usually through my E&O insurance and other types of insurance through my businesses, I have access to that representation. But I probably would.
Have them on retainer?
Yeah. Because I can expense it through my business. Okay. The next is the investment management. Okay. So you're going to be, doing these 401ks with these companies. Don't leave your 401ks in any of the companies. When you leave a company, roll them over into a self-directed IRA. Okay. And get an advisor to advise you on the wealth. Okay. If you don't, some of these 401ks go BK when the company goes BK. Then you just lost your, retirement income. The problem with the self-directed IRA that's invested in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds is you have no downside protection. So if the market goes, you go with it. If you're going to retire right around the same time that the market goes, you're probably going to have to continue to work for another 10 years, maybe into your 70s. So you don't have any hedge, no protection. You can get a variable annuity. You roll it into a variable annuity with a guaranteed investment protection rider. You pay a fee, and it's basically a put option for 7 years. 3 7-year terms. So my portfolio goes up. I bring up the the bar, the expiration, the exercise. It goes up again. I bring it up. I bring it up. Every time I'm paying a higher fee on the assets under management. But if the market takes a dump, The insurance company is on the hook for whatever I lost within the guaranteed income annuity. So I'm basically using a long put option as portfolio insurance for my retirement account. Freaking brilliant product. You can also put money into a guaranteed future income annuity. 50 years old, I got $1 million. I want to take the $1 million, give it to the insurance company for 20 years. And when I turn 70, me and my wife or myself are going to receive $100,000 for the rest of my life. So I never run out of money. So it basically sets up a guarantee where you never lose any money. So you can put that in, you're qualified. Okay, but when you pull the money out, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. And then there's fixed annuities too. Those are people in their 80s and 90s that want no market risk and are just, they're done because they know they're only going to be around maybe 10 or 20 years. Then there's the non-qualified side. You can put money into stock brokerage accounts with liquidity because you're going to need access to the money for Johnny's education, a car, a down payment on a house, and you're going to pay the capital gains on the appreciation, you know, within those appreciated assets. You can also put money into these variable annuities. Rich people love to put their money into these variable annuities because there's no limits like there is over here. So they're just plowing money into these things. They only pay, you know, the taxes when they pull the money out. It's all accumulating tax deferred, and because it's an annuity, it's asset protected. So if anybody's trying to steal your shit, they can't get to the assets, okay? Because it's a legal, separate legal entity, okay? And then you can do the guaranteed future income annuity. I love this after tax because $33,000 of the $100,000 that I'm receiving is tax deductible because it's a return basis under the IRS code. And then you got fixed annuities, you got real estate in businesses, and you can shield a lot of money through your real estate assets through depreciation and expenses, and the same thing with your businesses. You can collapse almost all of your expenses by running it through your corporation and your businesses. Awesome. How much time do I have? How much? Okay, I'll be done like in literally 10 minutes. Okay, so you've accumulated all of this wealth. Now it's like, how do I asset protect it and how do I transfer it efficiently? Because I don't know about you, I love the federal government. I wish they took all of my wealth. I mean, they're so great, you know, taxes and everything, I love them. You know, the government and taxation is just wonderful. It's awesome. I love it. I love taxes. Do you love taxes? I know you do, because I do. Okay, so you're going to accumulate these assets, okay? There's going to be two types of assets that you're going to own at some point in time. Fractional shares and wholly owned shares. Wholly owned shares in the corporation or wholly owned real estate assets. You own it. You own the whole thing. It's yours, okay? Here you're in partnership with others in the businesses and the real estate. The problem with these, okay, is there's no real liquidity. They're not marked to market, okay? So if you pass away, your heirs, yeah, woohoo, it's like we got all these assets. Uh-oh, shit, I got a tax bill, okay, on these assets. We don't have enough money to pay the tax bill. So we have to liquidate the assets to pay the tax bill. Oh shit, we don't have enough money from selling the assets to pay the tax bill. I can't believe you guys did that. You didn't leave me assets, you left me your liabilities is what you left me. So there's got to be some tax planning around that too, and some estate planning around that too. And you guys got to learn all this stuff. You got to know what your parents and your grandparents are doing, like now, okay? Because you don't. Usually every class it's only one or two students that actually are part of the process. Everybody else is like, yeah, I know. Really? No. Then you have the wholly owned assets that you put into the irrevocable trust. Okay? Why would you do that? Asset protects. And then when you pass away, the assets go to your heirs at a stepped-up basis and they don't pay any taxes. Woohoo! Yeah. Okay, but there's personal real estate debt, and there may be some tax consequences associated with liquidating these assets upon death. So what's the solution? The ILIT, the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. The Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust is you get the life insurance on yourself, you use the income coming off to pay the premium, pretty high premium, and basically the trust is set up to be the beneficiary of the death benefit when you pass away. When you pass away, the money goes into the trust, takes out the personal debt and the real estate debt, pays any taxes, personal debt, real estate debt, any taxes, the whole frit and kit and caboodle goes to you, debt-free, tax-free. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Grandma and Grandpa, for setting this up. That was freaking brilliant. We really appreciate it. But I don't know about you. I don't believe in any of this stuff because I just want to invest and incur the taxes because I love taxes. God, I love taxes. Income taxes, paying between 39 and 70% of my income in taxes. Love it. State taxes. I love the state of California. It's awesome. You take 10% of your income on top of your feds. Love it. Love it. Give me more. Okay, I will. Capital gains tax. You sell the appreciated assets, real estate, or stocks and bonds. You're going to pay a 20% capital gains tax. You've been depreciating the real estate over the last 25, 30 years, pocketing the cash. Oh, I'm rich. Uh-oh. When you go to sell the property, you got to pay a recapture tax along with the capital gains tax, unless you do a 1031 Starker exchange. Okay? And even then, the only way to avoid the taxes is to throw the property into an irrevocable trust and die. Because then the property goes to the heirs at a stepped-up basis, and there's no capital gains or recapture tax to them. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Transfer tax on the real estate, 10%. Retail sales taxes in San Francisco, 8 to 10%. And there's a bunch more that just totally take out, your net income, your income. So I don't know about you. I love the taxes. I don't do any of this stuff because I love government and I love the taxes. Okay. So the last part is the estate planning and asset protection. Now, my recommendation for all of you, okay, and I know you'll all be running out to LegalZoom.com and going and talking to a estate, planning but the first thing I would do is get a will, okay? And make sure that in the will you have a medical directive, okay? That basically states if you get in a car accident or you become disabled and, vegetated, that basically when they have you on life support and basically they're draining your parents' bank account to basically keep you alive, that they could pull the plug and not basically take everybody down in the process. Okay, so it's very humiliating and humbling, but again, at the end of the day, it's really taking care of everybody else, right? And not only yourself, but other people around and don't not be taking other people down because of your lack of, consciousness or lack of planning. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then the living trust, okay? This doesn't, give you stepped up basis, but it does tell you where the assets are gonna go that circumvents probate. If you don't have a will and you don't have a living trust in particular, you're gonna have the government in your stuff basically overseeing the liquidation and distribution of your estate. And you're gonna have to get an attorney, and it could take months or years to distribute it. So you just completely screwed everybody up by not doing the planning. So a living trust. And then the irrevocable trust we talked about. Oh, these are my favorite, right here. The dynasty trust and the generation skipping trust. These are awesome. Let me do a little skip for you. Ring. Hello? What? Oh, Mom, how are you? Yes, I love you too. Oh, Ginny and Jerry are doing great this morning. Now we're having waffles and berries for breakfast. What's going on? What? What? You did what? Grandma and Grandpa set up a dynasty and a generation skipping trust. Grandma and Grandpa basically told me, the father, of the kids, the grandkids, that we're not getting any of the money. That basically they're going to generation skip. So everything's not going to us because we're so successful, we have plenty of money. We're not going to get any of the money. Ginny and Jerry's going to get the money. So they're going to skip over us and give it all to them. You got to love that. You're going to love it. Okay, and then the last is charitable remainder trust. That's pretty awesome too. A lot of people have a ton of money sitting on real estate and stocks. They basically pull the money out from the trust, okay, tax efficiently. And then basically the asset, the stocks and the real estate, goes to the charity upon death. So basically they're able to pull all that money out tax effectively because they're using a charitable remainder trust as a solution to not having to pay all those taxes. Freaking brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, the rich guys on the East Coast know exactly what they're doing, okay, when they design these things. And then the intentionally defective trusts. These are basically special trust units, structures that were basically set up for unique family and unique trust cases, particularly international families and international individuals that need to plan. And a lot of this stuff is treaty, tax treaty oriented, to be able to allow basically to be taxed and, tracked and, take advantage, where they could take advantage on a global basis across different domiciles across the world. So that's basically all I got. I hope you enjoyed the entertainment for the evening. I try to be as entertaining as possible, but it was a totally awesome class. Loved working with everybody. Let me know what I can do for you. References, phone references, letters of recommendations to universities. If you're looking for jobs, internships, whatever, I'll be available for you. And if you like me as a person, and you see me as somebody that you would want to be friends with, I'm like an old dog. I'm extremely loyal, and I'll be your friend to the very bitter end. You can stick me out on the porch in the rain, and I'll still be there in the morning. Thanks, everybody.